Hello again, class. Welcome to video 14, Habit 5, Part 1. Seek first to understand, then to be understood. I think of all the 7 habits, this is maybe my favorite and the one that has had the most impact on me. So let's start out by letting me discuss with you uh, a cartoon strip that was in the newspaper many years ago, which I failed to keep, I wish I had. But it's about a girl named Kathy who works. She's a young single adult. She's working in an office. She has a boyfriend named Irvin, and she goes to the hairdresser one day to get her hair fixed. And you know how women do. They point at the model in the magazine and say, I want my hair to look like that. And then after the appointment, it doesn't look anything like that. And they often are disappointed. Well, this is an exaggeration of that type of experience, which is what they do in comedy. So she had gone to the hairdresser. It turned out terrible, weird color, so I made it orange, sticking all up and everything. And so Kathy refused to go to work. She refused to see her boyfriend. She just stayed in her apartment for 3 or 4 days, and her boyfriend kept calling her and saying, can I come over? And she kept saying no. So finally, in desperation, he went to her apartment and he rang the doorbell and banged on the door and said, I know you're in there and I'm not going away till I know what's wrong. So finally she opened the door and said, you want to know what's wrong? Here's what's wrong, and pointed at her hair. And he said, wow, what happened? She said, well, I went to the beauty parlor to get my hair fixed and this is what they did. He said, well, they caused the problem. Why don't you go back and have them fix it? She says, I can't do that. I can't even be seen in public. And he said, well, why don't you just wear a hat to go back? And to that she replied, men, all advice and no understanding. So that was a long story to introduce this concept that often we have a tendency, men, and I guess even women nowadays, to give advice when people don't want advice. They just want to be understood, which is the crux of habit number 5, seek first to understand, then to be understood. It's dealing with communication. Covey says that communication is the most important skill in life that we have, that listening is not just a technique, but it also involves our character, our conduct, our example, and trust. And that advice is only good if it's understood and accepted. Most of us really don't like to receive advice. And here's why. We use our own autobiography to understand others, and therefore we make a big mistake. My favorite example of this was when I had moved my family, and I had a daughter who was in about 5th or 6th grade, and we had been there for a few weeks, maybe 2 or 3 weeks, and she came home from school one day and she was just crying. And I said, what's wrong? And she said, how could you do this to us? Make us move to a new school. I don't like these people. They don't like me. I don't have any friends. I want to move back. And I remember saying to her, I know exactly how you feel. When I was in the 6th grade, I had to change schools too, and I didn't like it. But you know what I did? I had some really neat baseball cards. And so I traded some baseball cards to some of the other kids in school, and that helped me to make friends. And we used to play marbles. And I had some really neat cat-eye marbles, and I'd play marbles and let them win, and that helped me to make friends. And she looked at me like I was from Mars, because I might as well been. In the first place, this wasn't the 1950s. In the second place, she wasn't a boy, and nobody played with baseball cards or marbles anymore. I was using my own experience or autobiography to try to understand her, and it was nowhere near her situation. And that's a mistake we often make. Another mistake that we often make is trying to reform everyone we meet. It's a positive human trait to want to help other people, and often we do that by giving them advice. Sometimes we get into what I call the reformation business. We try to reform others and make them into what we think they should be. To accomplish them, we try to give them a little constructive criticism. The problem is they might not see the criticism as all that constructive. They just view it as criticism. So be very, very careful about giving criticism. In fact, this is my little formula. For every one negative thing you're going to say, you need to give 9 positive things. That's the only way you can ever be successful. So if you're going to criticize somebody, you better give them 9 positive things about them before you ever give criticism. Better yet, don't criticize. And don't give advice unless they ask for it. So there's different levels of listening that we have. We're talking about communication. The first is ignoring. We just don't listen at all. We ignore what somebody's saying. Second is pretending we're listening, but we're not. You've probably done that sometimes. You're watching a ball game or a TV show or something, and somebody starts talking to you, and you really want to keep watching your show, and you pretend like you're listening. Students do this in class all the time to instructors, I know. The next is called selective listening. You tune in things you're interested in and you pay attention to that, and other things you don't. If you're in the market for a new car, you pay attention to all those car commercials. Otherwise, you don't even listen to them. The next level, which is a higher level of listening, is called active listening, where you try to really listen to what someone said, and to make sure that you are listening, you paraphrase back to them what you heard them say. You say it in your own words, so they'll know that you heard the message. But an even higher level is called empathic listening, where you're listening not only to the words that are being said, but the emotion, what the people are feeling when they're trying to communicate with you. So this is what we're talking about, as we're talking about empathic responses. And here is a video by Covey talking about empathic responses.
Okay, let's do a little review of this concept of empathy. And let me describe the 5 phases of learning empathic responses. Mimicking, paraphrasing or rephrasing, okay? You say their words, their meaning in new words. There's the faithful translation on content. The third, reflect feeling. It's hurting, it's pain, frustrating, happy, relieved. See? Just, you're listening with the eyes and the heart. You're listening to body language. Your head is in where that person is. Fourth, rephrase content and reflect feeling. It's relieving to at last find out where you are on these tests, in reading or whatever, see? And the fifth is to kind of just say nothing. You're just with the person and they can sense it. And you do that when you feel confident that they feel understood and that they know you understand. That's all part of Habit 5. To seek first to understand is to get an education. To seek first to understand is to do surveys with customers. To seek first to understand is to empathically be a faithful translator to another. To seek first to understand is to, never even having related to another person, to know there are certain generic needs in all people. That which is most personal is most general. Therefore, there's a certain civility, a certain courtesy, a certain basic kindness, a certain basic treatment that apply across the board, that basically tap into those universal principles we have spoken about before. And the last half of Habit 5 is just the concept of then to be understood, then judge, then act, then go into problem solving. Now, test this, my friends. Test the power of this. Next time you get into a difficult situation, just say to yourself, the end in mind I have is not my way. Instead, It's a better way that has not yet been discovered. I'm going to just empathize. I would like to have this opportunity. Whether that really logically comes out of it, I don't know. I remember one situation. I had taught habits 4, 5, and 6. And then I said, tonight, practice it in some situation. And tomorrow morning, report back on your experience. The person came in, I cannot believe what happened last night. It was a real estate situation. He said, I've been working on this commercial real estate situation for 8 months. All my eggs were in one basket. I had no income. I was very dependent upon this situation. I was so vulnerable, so desperate. And I'd been doing everything I could to finesse, to make it look like it would be win-win, but one way or another I was going to win that deal. Last night, we went to a hotel room with the party that we're trying to deal with, and he had his attorney there, his accountant, and there was another real estate person brought in. And he said, my heart sunk. And he could see the handwriting on the wall. It wasn't going to go in his direction. And then he said, I'm going to lose this. Why not try what a teacher taught me today? He said, if I'm going to lose it anyway, why not try it? And he said to the person, he had to really kind of breathe deep and be prepared. I may lose it, but I'm going to try it. Let me see if I understand what it is you really want and what your most fundamental concerns and needs are. I hear you saying, correct me if I'm wrong. And he started to put it forth. The other person said yes, and he just stayed with listening from within the frame of reference of the other. He started to listen fully. He learned some things he had not learned before. He didn't rush in. He had enough discipline and patience to not rush in with his good solutions and based on his past mentored formula of success. He listened. He was open. It started coming forth more and more. He started to learn. He persisted for no more than about 15, 20 minutes. The man said, would you excuse me for a moment? He went to the other side of the room, picked up the phone, called his wife, turned back and said, you've got the deal. This guy was aghast. He said, I had no idea what happened. I tried to explain. Far more important than the technical elements of the deal was the quality of the relationship. That's the power of it.
I love that story about the real estate agent because its stuff really works. Now, one way to improve your listening skills is to pay attention to nonverbal cues. You can tell if someone's listening by their eyes, if they nod, if they smile. If you pay attention to that, you know they're listening. So if you want to improve your listening skills, pay attention to your eyes, your nodding, your looking. I remember one time my daughter wanted to talk to me and I was trying to read the newspaper and I was pretending I was listening. And finally she stopped and pulled my newspaper down and grabbed my face and pointed it towards her and said, Daddy, listen with your eyes. She wanted me to really listen. So we need to avoid nonverbal negative messages, condescending nonverbal communication, like rolling your eyes when someone's talking, or looking down your nose at them, or slightly shaking your head while the other person's talking. Then they don't feel like you understand. They feel like you're judging them. What you're saying is, what they are saying is, or what you're saying if you do this, is that what you're saying is childish and stupid. I'll tolerate your talking, but I know you're wrong. Boy, that's not going to open any doors, is it? This will only serve to make the other person angry or defensive. So the first part of this habit is seek first to understand, to take the frame of reference of the other person. That story that Covey just told, where the real estate salesman took the frame of reference of the customer. While you're presenting your argument, if you're having a disagreement, what's the other person doing? If I'm pro-life and you're pro-choice, while I'm talking to you about why you should be pro-life, what are you doing? You're saying, well, I can refute this with that. Wait till you hear this argument. And you're not really trying to understand me. And then when your turn comes, guess what? I do the same thing to you. We're not trying to understand each other. So we need to learn to listen both emotionally and intellectually. Now, another great listening skill and a way to help you implement Habit 5 is given in this video called the Indian Talking Stick. Listen to this story.
This is called the Indian Talking Stick. It was given to me by Indian chiefs after training them for several days. They run Indian nations in North America, the States and Canada. They even gave me my name, Bald Eagle. It's authentic, specially carved, beautiful. But you could use a pencil, you could use a spoon, a conch, anything. The whole idea of it, and they taught this to the founding fathers, most powerful communication idea and technique I have ever found, ever. How many are frequently in meetings where you can just feel the hidden agendas operating? I always like to break that down fast. I always like to heal divisions in your own family. Two kids that are quarreling with each other. Just do this. You just go up and you say to the other person, you've got the talking stick. I can't say anything. Maybe I can ask a question to see if I do understand your point, but I can't make my point, I can't agree, I can't disagree. All I can do is communicate until you feel understood. As soon as you feel understood on your point, then you pass the talking stick or pencil or whatever to me. Now it is my turn, and you are quiet, and you listen with empathy until I feel understood. As soon as I feel understood, I pass it back to you. Until you feel understood, then you pass it back to me. Now what happens is literally it transforms defensive, negative energy into creative, transforming energy. Here's why. When you really listen to another in depth until they feel understood, you are communicating their worth, their potential. You are affirming them. It is so therapeutic, so healing, that they cannot fight you. And they gradually become more and more open. Try it tonight with your loved one. You see two kids fighting, just walk up to the smaller one and say, honey, you've got the pencil. No one can talk until you feel understood. And then, as soon as you feel understood, and we make your point to your satisfaction, then you pass it to your older sister or brother. Just try it. You think it takes time? It will save so much time. And in your meetings that you go to, basically you say, let's agree to the simple ground rule that no one can make their point until they restate the other person's point to his or her satisfaction.
Great little tool, the Indian Talking Stick. So again, we're seeking first to understand by taking the frame of reference of the other person and realizing that we shouldn't be trying to think how we're going to rebut it while they're talking, and listen emotionally and intellectually. In other words, we're using our ears and our eyes and our heart so we can not only intellectually understand, but we can also feel what the other person is feeling. Your problems may not really be due to poor communication or poor communication skills, but to poor attitudes and feelings. Often we say poor communication is the problem, and that's sometimes just the scapegoat. Have you ever noticed you can communicate so easily with those to whom you're close? I had a first cousin who I was really close to growing up. He was my roommate in my freshman year in college. best man at my wedding. I was best man at his wedding. And then we went our different ways. He went into the Air Force before I did, and we lost track of each other for like 20 years. But when we saw each other again, it was like we'd never missed a beat. We could communicate so easily. And I didn't need to worry about my words or guard what I said or how I said, because we had uh, a great relationship. We were close. So if you develop the proper feelings and attitudes in a relationship, good communications will be a natural byproduct and will kind of take care of itself. Well, next to survival, the greatest need of a human being is psychological survival. We all want to be understood, to be affirmed, to be validated, to be appreciated. And if you can give that to someone, they will love it. You know, you probably, only know me as a professor. You don't know me as a husband, a father, a church leader, whatever, a consultant. My wife knows me as a husband, but maybe not as a professor, and so forth and so it goes. So when we feel like somebody's really understanding us and getting us completely, boy, we just love that. So if you want to be known as a great friend or a great conversationalist, just get the person to talk about themselves and try to give them that understanding that they want. So we should listen to feelings and respond with compassion. So you go to see your sick friend and he says, "I'm so glad to see you. I feel just fine," and he covers his head up. Obviously, he doesn't want you there. In the North American culture, the purpose of most communication is to provide information or meaning. But people also communicate to let others know how they feel. This is true in other cultures even more than our culture, but it's also true somewhat in our own culture. Let me give you a very personal example of applying Habit 5. So one night my wife and I went to bed, and it was late, and as I was trying to fall asleep, my wife said to me, "Steve, I've had it with this marriage. I can't stand it anymore. Tomorrow morning I'm packing my bags. I'm leaving you and the kids." And I thought, why did you wait till we're in bed to talk about this? She would have probably said, "Because I couldn't get your attention otherwise." I don't know. But anyway, I didn't know what to say. It was obvious she was upset and she was determined. And I didn't know what to do. But since I had been studying Covey and knew about Habit 5, I said, well, at least tell me why. I want to understand. And so she started telling me. I know one of the things she said was, "I don't get any respect. Kids will ask me to do something and I'll say no, and they come to you and you say yes. You don't show me respect. They don't show me respect." I wanted to say, well, if you want respect, you got to earn it. No, I didn't say that. I wanted to understand how she felt. And so I tried to understand. And I said, well, I'd feel that way too. What else? And so she told me what else. And this went on for several minutes with me not once giving her advice or trying to solve the problem. And then finally, I said, "Come here, babe." And she rolled over close to me in bed and said something like, "I love you so much, you know I'd never leave you." And then she says, "Wait a minute, you used Habit 5 on me, didn't you?" And I thought, I've been busted, man. And I said, "Well, yes, I did," because she knew about Covey too. And you know what she said? "Thank you. That's what I needed." Habit 5 saved my marriage that night, and it has several other times since then. So thanks, Covey. We need to learn in Habit 5 to seek first to understand or diagnose before you prescribe. If you went to the doctor and you were sick, and you get there and you say, want to see the doctor, and you wait 30 minutes in the waiting room, and you finally get in the examination room, and you wait another 20 minutes, and finally the doctor appears. He doesn't check your temperature, doesn't check your pulse or your heart rate, doesn't ask you any questions. He just instantly takes out a prescription pad and writes you a prescription and says, "Take this." Would you have any confidence in that prescription and that diagnosis that he just made? No, because he didn't ask you what's wrong, what's going on. He didn't run any tests. You need to diagnose before you prescribe. But your character has to be strong to listen well. Now, I'm going to stop this video in a minute, and we're going to start the next video by watching a film called Are You Listening? So the video lasts a little bit longer than I would want this opening video to last, so we're going to stop at this point, and that will be the topic of video number 15 that will follow this.